Well, joining me live now is Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson. Chair Vega Peterson, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, good evening, Claire.
So tomorrow, County Commission is set to vote on a final budget. We know the county is facing a $77 million deficit with 102 positions, multiple programs on the chopping block. When you released your proposed budget late April, it was met with some pushback from the district attorney's office facing some cuts, but there's been some amendments to restore some of that funding. Do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, I think that there's been a lot of good work over the last several weeks with the whole board really leaning in and seeing how we can continue to serve the community's needs. I think that there are a few different amendments that are been proposed to fill the DA's budget. I think we'll see tomorrow how they go. I think there's different folks who are maybe supporting different ones. So I think we're just going to have to see how the whole thing goes tomorrow.
Have you thought about changing your mind at all and giving the DA's office the money that it says it needs to keep their current level of service?
I was very thoughtful with the investments that I made in the budget, both for public safety, looking at the full funding for the sheriff's department, the additional dollars for additional jail capacity if we need it in the next year, and also recognizing that we have 7 departments across the county that we're taking really serious cuts on a lot of the other things that we do for community safety. So for the DA's budget, I'm going to take a look at the package that we end up with as a whole, with all the different amendments, and really make my decision based on that.
What would you say are the biggest changes since your proposed budget and where things stand right now?
So for me, when I put my my budget out, I was very intentional about funding homeless services, knowing that we had such a big deficit in the supportive housing service measure dollars that were expected to come in versus what we're going to actually receive, knowing that we have a really critical need in our community to fund those things. And so I had moved about $30 million of general fund already from other department, county services and programs into homeless services. That has actually been increased by some of the amendments that have been brought forward by the board. So I think we'll see an even bigger increase after tomorrow for homeless services. I think just shows like everybody knows that this is an urgent situation that we have to keep responding to. So I think that is one of the biggest changes. But I think we're also seeing a real commitment to trying to fund direct services. That was something that was a priority for me, but we're also seeing it in some of the restorations that are proposed in amendments for things like school-based mental health or legal services or things like that.
We mentioned earlier about 100 positions on the chopping block. What department may see the deepest staff cuts?
That is, I know that our health department is seeing a lot. They're also the largest department though. So from a percentage of the department, it might be less, but we're going to see a lot of vacancies, a lot of cuts there. Again, we tried to really focus on positions that were already vacant, but unfortunately that's not going to be 100% the case.
Going back to funding for homeless services, will the Old Town InReach program still be eliminated, do you think? I mean, that's a team of peer support specialists that Portland Day Centers tell me that they heavily rely on.
Yeah, that is one that I don't know that there's been an amendment put forward for. So at this point, I don't know that that's going to be restored.
Okay, Chair Jessica Vega Peterson, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Now, just a few hours ago, I caught up with County Commissioner Julia Brim-Edwards. She represents District 3. And here's what her priorities are heading into tomorrow's vote. Listen.
One, we need to reduce the number of homelessness, provide people with a path from the streets to housing. Second, it would be behavioral health issues, provide more access to mental health services, and also access on paths to treatment, including having a sobering center, withdrawal services, and treatment services. And third would be public safety.
She also introduced amendments to help with the district attorney's budget.
The first is funding the auto and organized retail theft task force, which is really important. We've had an escalated level of auto thefts. Mm-hmm. This task force has helped bring it down, and we want to continue that trend. Second, all of the law enforcement jurisdictions in the county now use body-worn cameras, and that requires additional resources, so providing resources so that video footage can actually be used. And this is a really important police accountability tool.
And in a statement, Commissioner Vince Jones-Dixon said in part, "My priorities are focused on driving public safety and economic opportunity for District 4 and the communities of East County. Our needs differ from those of the city of Portland, and I appreciate my colleagues recognizing that. by compromising and making trade-offs. Well, joining me now live is County Commissioner Shannon Singleton, representing District 2. Commissioner Singleton, thanks for coming on the show.
It's great to see you again, Blair. Thank you.
Yes, I saw you earlier today. Let's start with what your top priorities are heading into tomorrow's vote.
So I think, to start with, I had put out a press release about SHS dollars, supportive housing services dollars in other departments, and really wanting to find ways to make sure that we were getting that back into core services. And so some of my budget amendments are just that, cutting some other programs from the Department of County Human Services, for example, to bring SHS dollars back to homeless services. But then additionally, I was able to find that that same program only required $300,000 of general fund as opposed to $900,000 of SHS, because with general fund, they can leverage Medicaid match. And so we're actually saving ourselves some money on one of those amendments that I have in front of the board. Additionally, I had some priorities around things like voter education. I'm very concerned about the reduction for East County not receiving any education when the county will be going to our first ranked choice voting. And they didn't get that education during the city of Portland change. And so it felt really critical to me that we have some of that education happening. Additionally, I really looked at opportunities to refund some programs in the health department, particularly at the STI clinic, as well as thinking really broadly about what public safety looks like. And one of my bigger amendments is to refund legal services that include expungement, eviction prevention, support at eviction court, as well as support in getting people through some of the barriers that they have to housing placement.
So we know tomorrow they're still going to be talking about the budget. Are any of those priorities for you totally non-negotiable?
The permanent supportive housing was a very big one for me, and I think we found a good compromise today to make sure that some of our shelters that we know are slated to close during the fiscal year are still able to operate until their closure date, but that we then use that money for permanent supportive housing to make sure that we're really investing in that back end where we know it's about the housing with supports that helps people end their homelessness.
And where do you stand on the potential cuts to the district attorney's office?
So one of my amendments does include a reduction in the district attorney's office. I think that I've said from the front end of this budget process that the district attorney reductions that I saw in the chair's proposed budget really are in line with the types of reductions that we saw across the enterprise, and that I think it's really important that all of us are taking some of these reductions, and it's not being on one specific program or department or agency. And so I know that the DA also had additional ad packages that he was requesting, but I think it's really important to separate the two. So I think that that reduction is comparable to what we've seen across other departments at the county.
Speaking of reductions, do you support totally eliminating the Old Town InReach program?
I really was trying to find some funds to be able to refund that program, and particularly looking at opportunities to get it in line with some of the navigation work that we do. But honestly, it's been very challenging to find offsetting cuts for programs, and I really focused on some of the big ones that we know have really big outcomes for people, again, in ending their homelessness. Not that these other programs aren't important or meaningful, because they absolutely are. And if I had another $1 million, that would have been one of my budget amendments. I just could not find offsetting cuts for that.
We do know that $6 million is being proposed for harm reduction efforts. Do you support that?
I do support harm reduction efforts. Again, it's more than what I think a lot of people think about with harm reduction as far as needle exchange. It is very much about supporting people as they're trying to enter into recovery and developing those relationships with them to really use motivational interviewing and helping people move forward on their journey to recovery. And so I think it's important that when we think about the whole continuum of addiction services, the front end is harm reduction and the back end is really getting folks into those long-term treatment centers if they need longer term, or providing that outpatient clinical treatment setting for those who can thrive with that model.
Okay, Commissioner Singleton, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Blair.
Okay, now it's your turn to chime in. What do you think about what you heard tonight from the county chair and the other commissioners? Whether it's about the Sobering Center or tomorrow's budget vote, let us know. Email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090.